Hello and welcome back to Terra, where today the unthinkable has happened. Ladies and gentlemen, we've actually got new Eldar lore. There was a big reveal on Friday. There was a big reveal stream from Games Workshop, and they were supposed to be releasing all kinds of new 40k stuff. They were supposed to be releasing just, 10 new Space Marine kits and nothing else. That's, of course, what we all assumed. But lo and behold, the one reveal stream that I miss, Games Workshop come out and surprise everybody with an actual Exodite reveal. God damn. Quite frankly, it's almost uncomfortable to see Eldar fans get something that they've wanted for so long. Like, it doesn't feel like the kind of thing Games Workshop should operate. You will notice those models are both very nice and they are in a kill team. Now, this is quite important because when Games Workshop release a kill team, as they have done, it is important that you look at what's in the box. So in this box, very specifically, you have got just these Exodite, dragon riding units, which is very cool. It's what we sort of expected for them. But the other thing about that is it tells us that this is not an entire Exodite range kind of squashed into a kill team. So it looks very much to me like this is going to be the start of an Exodite army. And you will in fact remember, chat, that about a week ago, I did a prediction stream for 11th edition, and I did indeed predict that we would see Exodites for this edition, and I am immediately proven right. So there we go. Ghazghkull Khan confirmed for 11th edition Warhammer 40k. I think that's what we can all conclude, but it is very exciting in the meantime for Eldar fans. So let's take a look at Exodite lore. Let's take a look at what has actually been happening for the Exodites over the last 10,000 years, since the fall of the Eldar, in fact, and I've kind of been waiting for this reveal for a long time in the background, and so whenever I read an Exodite book, I do note down what are the passages and references to the Exodites that they put in so that I've been prepared. So I actually have quite a lot of passages from recent books that have come out, from the Inari series, from the Lilith Hesperak's book, from Void Scarred. The Exodites are very much an active faction. They do appear in these books. They are very much around and still kicking, but of course they haven't really taken center stage in any 40k narrative for a very, very long time. So let's take a quick look at some of their more recent lore just first. If you have no idea what the Exodites are, you can think of them pretty much as just like survivalist space elves who do indeed ride dinosaurs. So the thing that separates them from their kin is that long before the ancient Eldar Empire collapsed in a massive chaotic party that birthed the Chaos God Slaanesh, the Exodites saw the writing on the wall. They packed up, left the Empire, and settled on these lush paradise planets that are known as Maiden Worlds. And Maiden Worlds are a very common setting for Eldari books. So they live these hard kind of rustic lives where they are intent on not falling to the ways that their ancestors did, or at least the Eldari that didn't join the Craft Worlds or didn't join them in their kind of exiles onto these Maiden Worlds. So the first big quote I wanted to talk about is actually from the perspective of a Harlequin. Harlequins, if you're not familiar, are another type of Eldari. They are these acrobatic clown warriors that serve the god Kegarak. And this Harlequin explains the difference between the Eldari factions and how they try to survive in the galaxy where Slaanesh, she who thirsts, is constantly trying to consume their souls. The Harlequin says, the Exodites follow a similar code by a similar means, eking out a rustic existence though isolating themselves from the greatest achievements of our collected peoples, who prevent threads of desire from tugging on their souls. Perhaps it does, but both groups trap their souls in crystals in the end. to keep them from the maw of she who thirsts, a largely efficient method, if somewhat lacking in grace. So this is what sort of defines the Exodites compared to, say, like the Craft Welders. So the Craft Welders do use a lot more technology than the Exodites use, but also one of the key things is what they do with their souls. So whereas the Craft Welders, they basically, once they die, their souls are kept within the soul stones that you see on Eldari models. When it comes to the Exodites, their souls are actually basically taken in by the Maiden Worlds, by the planet, and that's why their planets have these world spirits, these very powerful psychic presences that literally aid them in combat, and the planets themselves will work to defend the Exodites when they come under attack, which is pretty cool. So the Exodites deliberately reject kind of the advanced technology and luxuries that a lot of their kin get to enjoy. They believe that by living this tough life, they won't fall into the same decadent traps of desire and excess that doomed their ancestors. And just like their spacefaring cousins, when they die, their souls are saved, but not in the Waystones, but in the planet's world spirit. So, in terms of, then let's take a look at a quote from some of the other Eldar and how they view the Exodites. So in the book Voidsguard, we get to see kind of this great clash between how all of the different Eldari factions operate. So it said that the Craft Welders saw the Exodites as rustic and unsophisticated, and the warrior clans in their turn tended to view their spacefaring cousins as pretentious and condescending, and still far too close to the lifestyles that had led to their fall. So this is a really interesting little idea, because generally speaking, when the Exodites get mentioned in 40k in like modern day, they get mentioned in the Craftworld codexes or the Drukhari codexes. The difference between those two is that the Drukhari don't care at all for the Exodites, and so they will happily take their kin as slaves. They will happily keep them trapped within their games, put them into their gladiatorial pits, and so they really sort of despise anybody that isn't in the Drukhari, and they despise most Drukhari. And but the Craft Welders themselves are also not particularly close with their cousins, although there are many times we see in the lore that they do actually go to defend the Maiden Worlds. In particular, it's the Craft Worlds of Baal-Tarn and Iyanden. That's the green Craft Welders and the yellow and blue Craft Welders. And the reason that they care so much about the Exodites is because really what they care about is the Maiden Worlds. So the Craft Worlds of Baal-Tarn and Iyanden, what they believe is that the days of the Eldari Empire are not over. So they think that one day they will rise once again, and to do that, the Maiden Worlds will be crucial. The Maiden Worlds will be the basis, the genesis of this new Eldari Empire. And that's one of the reasons this new kind of Exodite reveal is very exciting, because this lore, this idea is very old. And so the fact that you've got Exodites rising in the galaxy once again definitely tells us that Games Workshop could push towards this idea of trying to at least start a new Eldari Empire. I don't know how far it will get, but at the very least, that is something that all Eldari fans can get excited about. You can actually see something in the future, and you can actually be like, wow, our faction's got a direction, and that's just pretty cool. So very exciting times. Where were we? So cool, yeah. So the Exodites, pretty much the hillbillies to the Craft Welders, being kind of like upper class rich people in that sort of comparison. And yes, they're definitely going to come to blows in the future. I think there's definitely going to be some difficulty, but typically you're going to see them ally together to push back against the invading Imperium, the invading Orcs. The Craft Welders generally, as much as they can kind of despise the Exodites, they absolutely hate when the Imperium even steps foot upon a Maiden World, and they view any attempt to colonize any Maiden World as an act of aggression, even if there are no Exodites present on the planet. And in Voidsguard, for example, as soon as they find out that there are some humans on this Maiden World, they immediately call for just a straight up genocide. They're not here to play, they're not here to bargain. You don't go on the Maiden Worlds or else you will be killed, which is fair enough, I guess. Anyway, But living on these beautiful paradise worlds isn't completely safe, because they reject this kind of high-tech massed psychic technology of the Eldari people, and the evil Drukhari, for example, do find it very amusing to pillage the worlds for slaves and for just for fun, really, to be honest with you. And in Voidsguard, we see this Corsair pirate captain who bluntly points out the major weakness that the Exodites have in battle. He says, which is exactly what happens to the Exodites every time one of their worlds is discovered, unless those of us who don't rely on giant reptiles to fight our battles for us intervene. So it's kind of a funny one, because for 40k fans, we love the idea that the Exodites ride giant dinosaurs, but from the Corsairs and presumably like other Eldar, that's actually their weakness, because if they didn't have these giant dinosaurs, they're screwed. And the giant dinosaurs do have a limit in 40k when everybody has got the strength, speed, and stamina of a superhuman. So the dinosaurs can only take you so far. But yes, one of my favorite preferred quotes there. But yes, I thought that was a fun one to talk about. I'm pretty excited for this lore. Like I say, I think there's a genuinely good chance that this actually plays into some pretty big lore in the future. Not only are we likely to get an actual further Exodite releases, I think it's pretty likely that this is the kill team that they release first, and then they'll follow up with a codex, maybe this edition, maybe next edition, and that will have further units to support it. I guess it will depend on how well this box sells, but that does mean lore-wise that not only are we going to get a new Exodite like faction basically getting more attention in the game, but it also gives hope to you Craftworld fans. If you would like there to be a new Eldari Empire, if you would like to stop parading around as this dying race, then hey, I mean, now you've got your option. So there we go. Anyway, chat, how's it going? Let me know how you're feeling. Are you excited about this? What are you excited for? Flagwatch, thank you so much. Greetings to Germany. Good luck against Spain if you do play. No, France, I think you're going to play second round. Sparkling Clean, yes. I have got a fan on in here. I don't know how loud it's going to be, but hopefully it's not too loud. But yes, I should be slightly less shiny this stream, which would be good. Eldar is getting love. Yes, very nice. It's just... yeah, it never happens. I mean, the Eldari as a faction in 40k probably get the least love out of everybody, I would say, for what they are, what they should get. And I think part of that is because historically their stuff hasn't really sold well. Like a lot of Eldar fans have been playing for a very, very long time, and so they haven't got a massive incentive to go out and buy whole new stuff. Whereas Space Marine fans, like you know, Games Workshop can chuck out anything and we'll buy it. But it's sort of a catch-22, because on the one hand a lot of the Eldar stuff hasn't sold very well, and on the other hand a lot of the Eldar stuff hasn't been worth buying. So when they released the Corsair box, which they released earlier this year, when they released this Exodite box, then this is a big deal for Eldar fans, because if this does well, at the very least Games Workshop's going to get the idea that actually it's worthwhile investing in this stuff. Sari, for air conditioning fan, thank you. In fact, well, Sari, you know, you do actually remind me of something. I don't think I put this in my notes, but I do think it is worth talking actually just a little briefly about the fact that the Exodites are a pretty big deal in the Horus Heresy. It's a small thing, but it is significant. So towards the end of the Horus Heresy, if you're not familiar, Vulcan has he was turned insane by Conrad Kurz and by being teleported across the galaxy and burning up in the atmosphere of Macragge. He is taken home. He's basically taken home to die, but then he is saved when one of his sons sacrifices himself. And Vulcan has to make it back to Terra, right? So there's a big sort of twist, I guess, as you'd call it, at the end of the Heresy, because we never thought Vulcan would be at the Siege of Terra, but he does make it. And the Exodites do play a role, seemingly working with like Eldrad Ulthuan, or at least some higher up Eldar, that they do aid Vulcan a little bit on his journey back to Terra. So he is traveling across the ruined world of Caldera, and he and his sons are confronted by, you know, of course, the giant lizard riding Exodites, and these dragon knights aid Vulcan in a couple of ways. They toss Vulcan a silver object known as a seed of Aisha, and once Vulcan ingests this kind of like acorn looking thing, then it sort of has warp magic within it, and it translates all of their language. So Vulcan can now speak Eldari, and he can understand the roots of all languages, and yeah, it allows Vulcan to converse with them, because Primarchs can learn like Eldari tongues, but even Primarchs can't learn them very well. But Vulcan actually can speak like fluent everything now, because the Exodites gave him this special silver acorn, which is pretty cool. So nice one for you Salamanders fans. And then, of course, the Exodites then lead Vulcan and show him a clear way that humans have never known about before on the planet that will allow Vulcan and his sons to pass unharmed, so that they can get to the Webway Gate and then go through the Webway and eventually find their way back to Terra. So they do play a pretty important role. If Vulcan hadn't gotten back to Terra, who knows how things would have got played differently. He did play a very important role in fighting against Magnus. He was pretty much the only person that could fight against Magnus. So there you go. That one's for you, Seri. Exodites. Yeah, you've done that. That's the thing, the big thing that you do really in the heresy. So well done, guys. Yeah, thank you for the gift of memberships. Thank you so much. I know, so I told you I was going to stream on Friday, but I actually played my first game of Warhammer 40k of 11th edition. So yes, I've forgotten that. I organised that, but that was also a lot of fun. 11th edition seems pretty good. If you've played it, let me know what you think. Eldar fans happy and natural, exactly. Yeah, a little bit of me wants to be like, bloody knife ears. Why are they getting stuff? Where's my Primaris Lieutenant? Games Workshop. That's what I want to know. Are the writers slowly moving towards a truce between humanity and the elements of the Eldar? Seems like a natural fit outside of the kill everything attitude. I don't think we're going to get a full alliance, but obviously it's going to be in places there will be alliances. You know, definitely certain craft worlds, Ulthway obviously most prominently, but I don't think you'll ever get a full alliance, because it is a tabletop game. They have to say in the grim darkness of the far future there is only war, and also, to be fair, the craft worlds are not unique. They are not a monolith. They are very much, yeah, they are as disparate as human worlds. Thanks for funding Dark Angels propaganda. Absolutely pleasure. It would have been a good idea to have the last Crone sword with Fulgrim when he returned. Seeing fairy boys on the offensive would be cool. It would have been exciting. Like, I feel like there was a potential middle ground they could have gone to. Like, you could have had this is what they did in AOS, which I thought was pretty cool, was you could have Slaanesh not be killed, but like imprisoned, or Slaanesh be shattered, or something like that, which sort of changes the setting, at least for, you know, 10 years, whatever, before Slaanesh gets reformed. So like, you could have the Eldari get all the Crone swords, summon Iniad, but then perhaps the Forces of Chaos do something to disrupt Iniad in the final hour, and he's not summoned properly, or whatever it's going to be, and so he can't properly kill Slaanesh, only shatter Slaanesh. And that's what I would have done, but they kind of did a similar thing for AOS, so I don't know if that's really on the cards now. That's pretty much what I thought was going to happen. And then the books didn't sell, so now we'll never know. Roticus Rainfather tried to take out one of their Maiden Worlds once. Oh, I mean, Nurgle happily accept Maiden Worlds. Sandman of Terra, really curious. Was the Golden Throne always on Terra before the Emperor unified it, or did he and Malkador create it using forbidden Dark Age / Xenos tech? So the story, the main book you want to read is the final book of the Carrion Throne series, and so what that tells us is that the Golden Throne, the core components at least, are all Eldari technology. So basically, the Emperor managed to find various pieces of Eldari technology, not just on Terra, but in other parts of the planet as well. And he he managed to connect them all. It's just various pieces of technology, and he managed to plug them all together, and he semi-understood what he was doing, but he isn't smart enough to understand this kind of Xenos tech, and so he made the core components of the Golden Throne from that. So he created it, in that sense, but he didn't, in a way he didn't create it, as in he didn't create the components, and even the Emperor doesn't understand everything about the Golden Throne. That's why the progress is so slow, but yes, that's sort of why there's such a big problem with it, because the core components are Xenos. Not only could the Emperor not fully understand them, the Mechanicus in 40k have no understanding of it whatsoever, and they just don't know how to fix anything. There's the core components of the throne, and then there's like a city behind it, you know, giving it power, giving it souls, giving it everything, right? But the actual main parts are failing. So everything else, there's some stuff from the Dark Age in there that is problematic, but they can generally work with. But when it comes to Xenos tech, the Mechanicus is literally not allowed to learn how to fix it, so they really just can't do it. I know next to nothing about these Eldar, but from the sounds of them, they are the weakest faction in lore. I think they probably are the weakest faction in lore, yes, kind of by design, and as you see, you talked about earlier, in the books, their cousins do poke fun of them. They do poke fun of them that they are basically the weakest, and there's multiple times where the Craft Worlders had to come and save the Exodites, come and save the Maiden Worlds, so they can't even do the thing that they're designed to do, which is just protect their homes. So yeah, they'll beat the crap out of some orcs, but against an exterminatus, they're pretty screwed. Can you make a quick rank of Eldari factions? So, well, it depends how you're going to rank it. So number one, like right now, I mean, you're probably going to go with like Harlequins, and if I was going to do it, I'd probably like Harlequins in their own tier. Like Harlequins are their own thing, because Harlequins they don't fit into any traditional power ranking. We don't know how many Harlequins there are. We don't know just how powerful all of the knowledge in the Black Library could make them. We don't know exactly what Kegarak is working towards. But in theory, everything is to their plan. Everything is working towards them. So I think there's like a Harlequin tier that they're probably in. After that, an interesting fact about the Eldar that I think people often misunderstand is that the most populous of the Eldari are actually the Craft Worlders. Most people assume it's the Drukhari, because the Drukhari have clones, and the Craft Worlders do much more fit this last of a dying race vibe the Games Workshop lean into. But the books actually say it's the Craft Worlders that are the most populous. And part of that is because Asdrubal Vex controls the populations of Commorragh. Of course, he doesn't want too many Drukhari, because that would be challenging to him. But also, it's because the Craft Worlders, a lot of Commorragh wasn't as big at the time of the Fall as it is today, and the Eldari Empire was massive, so even though a small percentage of them became Craft Welders, that was still a lot of people. So yes, interestingly, the Craft Welders are number one, and I'd probably put the Drukhari behind them, in the sense that right now things are worse for the Drukhari than for the Craft Welders, because the Drukhari need to figure out how to stop Commorragh being invaded by demons, and until they can do that, they are very close to being destroyed. Within the grand narrative of 40k, they're probably as close as you can get. However, the Drukhari have got incredible technology, and they don't need spirit stones. They don't need to bother with anything, because they can literally just grab their souls out of the warp and put them into new bodies. So they don't have to worry about all these world spirits and all this stuff. So there's definitely an argument to be made that technologically they're the most advanced. And then yes, Exodites would be at the bottom. Inari are supposed to be like a mix of everything, so I guess in terms of numbers and power, they're probably slightly above the Exodites. But if they ever get that 5th Crone Sword, it'll all kick off. RJS, thank you so much. What do you think inspired Exodite lore? They're eschewing the corrupting effects of technology. Reminds me a lot of the Amish, but they're avoiding the outside world. Reminds me of real-world anchorites. I think what inspired them was probably, actually, it was quite a boring answer, but I think it's the truth, is Wood Elves. So Warhammer 40k tries to be many things at once, and does that to varying degrees of successfulness. One of the things it tries to be, of course, is like a Dune sort of similar world. It has lots of random stuff in it that it thinks looks cool. They put in Terminator, they put in Rambo, they put in all this kind of crazy stuff. But of course, one of the bigger components of Warhammer 40k is it is partly, not all of it, but part of it is Lord of the Rings in space. So the general idea is that Games Workshop used to sell, there was Dungeons and Dragons, which was based off of Tolkienism, the Tolkien world, and then Games Workshop was selling Dungeons and Dragons, and then they wanted to sell their own things. So they made fantasy, which again was inspired by Tolkienism and like the J.R.R. Tolkien's world, and then that was very successful, and so they ended up trying to go, oh, what if we put Warhammer in the future, Warhammer 40k, and so Warhammer 40k inevitably has a bit of a base in Tolkien's world, and so that's why you see space dwarfs, space human empires, space elves, and so craft worlders are high elves, Drukhari are dark elves, and Exodites are wood elves. That is, I think, pretty much where the idea comes from, and I think it works quite well. I think it's pretty cool. Nothing's like a one-for-one, of course. I'm not saying that, but I think that's the genesis of it, really. And I do think even to this day, you can find lots of little references to things in Tolkien's world, so it's pretty cool. Do Exodites follow the same gods as the Azuriani? They do indeed. Yes, that's true. And I should say as well, it's not really like a matter of faith so much for them, because they know that those gods existed. I think they are tying things back to first edition, such as the Eldar and humanity working together. I don't think you'll get an Eldar human hybrid. I don't think you'll get that, but they do try to bring as much forward from first edition as they can. And so I definitely think there's a decent chance one day we'll see a Slan or something like that. I think that could work. Wait, so Exodites are Eldari rednecks? Pretty much, yeah. These are just souped up dinosaurs. That's all they are. I mean, they mentioned the Inari are now looking for the Tears of Morai Heg now, with the help of Craftwater Yandan, to awaken Iliad in Prince Iriel's story. Interesting. Is that from his new campaign book? That's pretty cool. I can't help but feel like the fact that Prince Iriel is now rejoining the Corsairs sort of tells me that one of the key figures of the Inari storyline has moved away from the Inari, and that's a bit of a blow. But I see where you're coming from. Step 2, kill Slanesh. Step 3, profit. Pretty much. Are Exodites a united faction, or are they just loads of individual worlds? Lots of individual worlds as far as we know. If there is a cross an interplanetary network, I have never read anything about it, but if I'm wrong, chat, let me know. Do you think the Xeno parts of the throne are Eldar or older ones, or another race? I think almost certainly old ones. 30 years of 40k I hear, and all the time Raven Guard, but collected a lot, and I'm loving the Exodites. New Kill Team Dino Riders. The box amount is a little shy, but I'll get them nice looking models. Yeah, I think it's a taste of what's to come, so I think you'll be happy in the long run. Currently building Space Marine side of 11th, but as Raven Guard, I'll switch up the legions for them and working through who to paint. Oh, interesting. Switching up the legions. That's pretty cool. Who are you thinking? Have you shaved the stash? No, the stash is still here. We stashed all the Arcaphane, is still rocking it. Emo Fulgrim is sad that they killed his favorite brother. They changed their color scheme to black. You talk. Oh, I'm misunderstanding. Sorry, I've lost what reference that's to. Is it actually pronounced Aisha? I thought it was pronounced Isha. I would say Aisha, but I am not Games Workshop, so I don't know. But I think either is fine. Of all the mispronunciations in Warhammer, I am all right with Isha, but I would personally say Aisha. In England, which is where Warhammer is set, I would read that as Aisha. And as you guys can tell from this accent, however I pronounce things, ironically, is correct. Hi, big fan for some time now. I have a question, if I may. Are Salamander's successors chapters black with red eyes like them? Thanks. Not all of them, no. So part of it is the son of Nocturne does have that impact upon them. But yes, fair question. Dark Angel's theory. Can the Lion be using some Risen or Chaos Fallen to spy on Chaos? Some kind of firewing, or are there any signs of that? There's no sign of like a return of the Firewing, but I think the idea that one of the successor Dark Angels chapters fulfills a similar role, that totally works. In terms of trying to spy on Chaos and the Fallen, definitely something he's going to be trying to do. I think taking out Luther is going to be pretty high on his priority list. Does that mean Terra was originally an Eldar world? It could be true. It could be part of it, but I don't think so. We do know that Terra and the humanity and the Eldar actually allied together for a long time, during like the Dark Ages technology and stuff. That seems to be pretty confirmed, because we know that there were like meeting places between them, etc. But a lot of the Eldari empire existed in the webway, or at least existed, they sort of didn't need they didn't need to control as much of the galaxy as you might expect, and it was pretty far away from Terra. If Slaanesh was destroyed, would Fulgrim die? Yes, he would definitely die. I think if because he's now part of Slaanesh. So I'm pretty certain if Slaanesh was to die, that would kill all demons that are part of Slaanesh. Related, is the Webway Gate on Luna the only one in the Sol system? There's the one under the Imperial Palace. But yes, as far as we know, I mean, presumably they're sort of all over the place. But yeah, we just don't know where they are. Which troop was it that casually fixed the Rubicon Marines as a flex? So that you're thinking of the Fracture of Beltan. So in the Fracture of Beltan, that is Ivrain who does that. So she's been killed by Ahriman, and so basically to distract him, she restores 2 Rubric Marines and then kills them, so that Ahriman will chase them, because Ahriman's dream is to undo the damage done to his brothers. So he works as a distraction. And afterwards, he does become a bit obsessed with her for a little bit, understandably, not in a stalker way, just in a, well, kind of a stalker way. Yeah. Why didn't he bring in Puerto to get a full understanding of the throne when he had him by his side? Perturabo. I guess it's a good question. In theory, some of the other Primarchs could have helped him in that regard. And yeah, I guess we don't really know what he was thinking there. I guess it was more important to him that they keep the Webway project a secret. It was more important that the Primarchs continue acting as his generals. So, but yes, in theory, the Emperor, it would have fit for the Emperor to ask Perturabo or one of the other technologically gifted Primarchs to aid him in fixing the throne. Why he didn't, we don't know. Do you think GW is planning on tying off the throne storyline anytime soon? I think so. I think it has to be dealt with at some point. I think we're going to get this kind of like Mars Imperium Civil War arc first, where you've got this new fabricator general who's seemingly hoping to break away from the Imperium, but that has to, once that's dealt with, you're fixed with it. There is a suggestion that in the Custodians Codex that maybe the Custodians will just focus on fixing it, but who can fix the Golden Throne is just a massive question. Do you think we'll ever reach a point where GW has a separate tabletop from the current lore? It would probably creatively free up both sides of 40k. I doubt it, because I feel like they know that ultimately their lore is what makes them money. You know, that's what the reason people are excited for Exodites is not just because there's some cool dragon models, but because of how important the lore is. There's a reason they make so many Space Marines. It's not because Space Marines are the most interesting models anyone's ever seen. It's because the lore of Space Marines is just that good or that popular. Didn't one of the Votan books say there were trillions of Eldar? I think that probably that does fit. There's certainly more than you might expect, I think. About the demon invasion of Komara, it's not even mentioned in the latest Drukhari book. That is true. Yeah, so for Vect, he's trying to, it's Vex, so he's trying to organize it. So he's put a bunch of his enemies by the vortex, and what's stopping the trying to so they'll be the first line of defense against the demons. But it is mentioned in the Drukhari codexes, and it is mentioned in the Vaults of Terror series. How do they steal their souls back from Slaanesh? Isn't she supposed to own them? So I think the general idea is that they get them back before Slaanesh eats them. So there's probably a time limit, but that's why you have to be a very wealthy member of the Drukhari to actually pull it off, because you need to have somebody who's willing to utilize this technology to do it. But how the tech works, yeah, we don't, beyond our understanding, I'm afraid. Wood elves in space, yeah, pretty much. Ardia, oh sorry, yeah, used to collect Warhammer's Lord of the Rings models. It was great. Yes, I still have friends that play it. They say the game's actually really good. It's in a great spot. So yeah, it's doing well, I think. In June, the Emperor walks a golden path. In 40k, he walks a brown path. Interesting. Well, he just doesn't really walk, to be honest with you. Ghazghkull use Blackstone to close the warp portal on Terra. Since the Emperor is being powered by Faith, and we see Faith-based warp powers work in the Pariah Nexus, the Emperor should still have his powers. We don't know, but I'm going to assume not. And the reason I assume not is because the portal actually goes into the webway, not directly into the warp. So if it was going directly into the warp, I think potentially maybe he could use it to sort of aid the Emperor, because it's said that like the energies of the warp do flow in that room. Maybe Blackstone will be a key ingredient in requiring less souls to be sacrificed for the Emperor in the future, like it empowers the Emperor's psychic powers. Not impossible, but I feel like the way the books are written sort of implies that Belisarius Cawl is being kept deliberately away from this plot line, because Cawl has his fingers in so many pies already, I guess. So yeah, he's pretty much kept away from it. But if he got brought into it, I definitely think that's something he would at least experiment with, for sure. Tolkien didn't invent elves or dwarves or people either. So that's true. He didn't invent them. But Tolkien's world did become the basis for, I mean, so much of fantasy that we see today. It's very, like, if you think about the impact that Tolkien had on the world of fantasy, it's unbelievable. And so whilst he didn't invent all of these things, the world in which he created, I mean, the fact that every dwarf character is a Scottish guy who loves mining, there's a reason for that. It's because of Tolkien. Like, it's that fucking incredible. The reason all elves are detestable. But there aren't dark elves in Tolkien's work. He does have a dark elf in Silmarillion. That is the thing. Or at least that there is, like, I can't remember exactly what they're called, but then they became like the basis of dark elves. But yeah, there is a plot line in that. And then they kidnap. It's been a while since I read the Silmarillion, but then they kidnap a lady, and then it's pretty horrible. Yeah, Silmarillion's a weird book. Do we have an estimated time of release? It might say at the bottom, new Kill Team box will be available for pre-order soon. Soon. Sorry, that's a rubbish answer, but soon is the answer. Yes, I imagine they'll want to get on with it relatively quickly, and they normally do about one a month. So I'm going to guess within a month, but I don't quote me on that. If you check out Valrak, he might have heard when it's coming. Could it be that Caldor Drago is working with Valdor in the warp? I feel like if you were going to bring in a Grey Knight to work with Caldor Drago, the obvious answer would be Hyperion, because Hyperion is not as popular or as well known as Caldor Drago, but he is still a very popular, very powerful Grey Knight, and of course is so powerful he's the Blade Breaker, right? He broke Angron's blade, but also we haven't seen a lot of him since Emperor's Gift, and he is connected to Ravener because he used to be on Ravener's retinue. So I feel like Hyperion is the Grey Knight you'd put in, but definitely not impossible, I would say, that you see some Grey Knights in the final Valdor book, because I'll throw that into the King in Yellow mention now, because of Hyperion. I feel like that would be a nice throwback to Ravener's series. And whilst Ravener is a big character in the Beckwin series, I mean, I feel like it's more Eisenhorn's show, really, and Ravener's is there to sort of, he's the guy, he's the detective who's going to bring in the rogue detective. That's what Ravener is, right? So you're there for the rogue detective when you like see one of those films or whatever. But yeah, I feel like Hyperion would be a great character to bring in. And everyone else is fighting Valdor, so why the fuck not? Are new Maiden Worlds able to be developed? Could there be a more aggressive Exodite force that could be actively conquering worlds? So yes is the answer to Eldar Worlds that can be developed. So in the book Dominion Genesis, you see this, which came out about a year ago. So in that book, we do see there's this like a very powerful technology that is able to completely terraform worlds and turn them into these sort of paradises, and the Beotani are very concerned about it. So at the end of the story, it does seem to be lost, but it's not impossible, like, because this technology is like so old, it's like hinted to have been created by like Vul himself or someone like that. So it's, yeah, they definitely do have this technology, but I don't think they can come by it easily. Perhaps not at all anymore. Maybe it is now lost at the end of that book, but it's not entirely clear. Most of it is about obviously the Admech. We were talking about if Fulgrim coming back as a loyalist. Oh, I see. Sorry. Good evening. Just finished Hive. Really hope they make more books like this. Really like the human boots on the grounds feel. The human condition in 40k is so deep yet forgotten. Yeah, it is. I definitely think it's going to be... I think it will be a highly recommended book in the future. Here's what we need to do: ask King Charles and see what he says. If he says it, that's how it is. Yeah, I think that's fair. Morgoth was once the most powerful of the Valar, if I recall. He was Melkor before becoming the first Dark Lord. Was he the most powerful? Or is he just... Because like that's the start, isn't it? At the start, they just sort of... It's a very... Because it's written like a myth. So it's like they were all singing, and then Morgoth sang out of tune, and you're like... So it's a funny one. But yeah, he also doesn't like to... He also doesn't like to be clear, you know, like Ungoliant and characters like that. Like, you don't know what Ungoliant is really. You just know that she's supposed to be like a creature of darkness, and you're like, well, that's not useful. What are the chances we ever see what the Eldar really look like from the War in Heaven? I think they'll look mostly the same outside of the Drukhari and the descending into decadence. I think most of their technology would work the same, but it would be fascinating to see, yeah, how they worked with their gods at the time, because there's also like that other War in Heaven that is mentioned in the Eldar codexes. When they say War in Heaven, they're often talking about the War of the Gods. So yeah, it's sort of how all this stuff intertwines is a really interesting idea. I'd love to know that. Are there any in-law apothecary terminators? Yes, there are. So in 30k, you have apothecary terminators. That is definitely true. And the Dark Angels had apothecary terminators. Outside of that, I can't think of any other references, but you have Gravis apothecary terminators. In fact, one of them is a central character in the Fourth Tyrannic War. So they are apothecary terminators definitely work. As whether you can play it, I don't think you can nowadays in 40k. In Heresy, I think you can use Legends rules and still use them. What do you think might happen to any potential alliance between the Eldari and humans? The wake of what will happen with the Yellow King whenever Pandemonium is released? Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, exactly why the craft welders are after the King in Yellow, we don't really know just yet, but hopefully it's something. They've got some spicy reason for it. So yeah, we don't actually know. We don't really see the 4 craft worlds are just mentioned as being after the King in Yellow and supposedly attacking, and they might be involved in the final battle that we see a glimpse of at the end. But exactly what the craft world's problem is with the King in Yellow, we don't entirely know. He's got enemies all over the place, so presumably at some point Valdor did something. Maybe he stole something from Amazing World or whatever. Hey Sandman, how the hell does this timeline work? Can Ibrahim Gaunt meet Eisenhorn? Oh, bloody hell, my chat just disappeared. Will Pandemonium take place before Guilliman comes back? All of this takes place in M41. I'm confused. Games Workshop are very bad at giving timelines. They don't like to, because they've been burned before, so they don't like to say exactly when things fall. We do know that the King in Yellow storyline has started before Guilliman's return. That is true. It might end after his return, because a lot of this is taking place in there's a lot of warp shenanigans that's taking place in the alternate reality. So there's a lot of shenanigans going on. So it could definitely pass over, but I don't but in terms of that plot line, that's where that sits. But as for most things, they just don't really say. For example, when Kane meets Guilliman, to find out that's the same timeline, you're like, oh, okay, cool, we've caught up. As for whether it's M41, most things are M41 in 40k so far, and the reason we can be pretty confident everything else is after is because the Fall of Cadia is M1 M999, so anything after that by logic has to be M2. But Games Workshop don't like to confirm. They don't say in the 42nd millennium very often. They say 41st. That's mostly just, it's one of those things, it's technically a fandom thing, but it's so logical you can't really argue against it. Do you know what I mean? I appreciate you helping answering my questions last week. Still will DM. My sister is US Air Force, I think, USAF, stationed in the UK. Will it be cheaper / easier for her to find used there? Ooh, so cheaper for Warhammer, for her to find cheaper used Warhammer. I guess it depends what you're after. A lot of stuff on eBay doesn't really go down on price, because if the demand is high, you normally see a couple of pounds. But for example, most of the 11th edition stuff you will be able to find super cheap in on eBay, because there's going to be so much excess stuff. So Space Marines you can normally get very, very cheaply. Drop me a message if there's anything in particular you're looking for. I'll happily help out. Where were we? Soon the Lion will actually meet Guilliman. Soon the next Primarch will return soon. The Andros will get his comeuppance soon. Yes, I think soon, yes, is not particularly exciting as a timeline, is it? I also think Games Workshop do have a habit of announcing things very early, but I feel like that's very common for all games companies now. They all sort of announce things. They released a trailer for Space Marine 3, didn't they? They released that, and that's not going to come out for it could be 4 years or something. It could be ages away. So I don't really know why they do all this stuff, but I don't know if it really builds hype if you're releasing a trailer for something coming out in 3 years' time. Did anyone ever use... did anyone ever use to read Nemesis the Warlock from 2000 AD? The Earth-based empire in that termite and its leader, Torquemada, often make me think of 40k. Oh, not familiar. GW saying Dawn is dead in that pop quiz. Stunlocked Valrak. I've never seen him silent and shocked like that. Did they say he was dead in the pop quiz? I saw that they said Gilliman was the best fighter, which is pretty funny. I think he beat the Khan, didn't he, for best fighter, which, I mean, how did that happen? How did that happen, 40k community? The Khan all day. All day. Crazy. Crazy people play Warhammer. That's tabletop players for you. Don't read the lore. That's where that comes from. Yeah, Gilliman's got a big flaming sword, right? He wins. Excited for the Telemon Dread plastic remake. Looks cool as heck. Yes, I like as well that they're marketing it as for both 40k and 30k, just removing any questions. Is there a lore for these Custodes walkers, or what book should I read if you want to follow all the Custodes lore? So interestingly, the first Custodian Dreadnought is a big thing. So that happens in Master of Mankind. So that is it's a big deal when a Custodian gets put into a Dreadnought, because Satera. Oh, if anyone in chat remembers his name, I think it begins with an S. I can't remember his name, but yes, it's a big deal when he gets put into a Dreadnought for the first time. The Custodians finding out the limits of their power, the limits of their mortality is a big deal. So yes, that is sort of a big thing. But in terms of them putting Dreadnoughts, it's the same thing with Space Marines, basically. Wasn't Hyperion essentially sent to the depths of Titan to be a prognosticator at the end of the book? Yeah, he has like all this like crazy power. He has very unique abilities, so he's able to utilize them to tremendous effect. But that was a fair while ago now. Do you have any resources to help read 40k books, e.g. which books are part of which series or timelines, etc., or top books for XYZ series, a blog or a website? Thanks for the stream, by the way. Lexicanum, I think, will keep a list of all of the book series. I assume there's a page on Lexicanum, actually, that has a list of every book. So you can, I'm sure they'll group them by series on that. The actual Black Library website is kind of rubbish. In terms of the timeline, that yeah, there's only no one knows, because the Games Workshop don't put a timestamp in each book. Some occasionally they do, but it's quite rare. Yes, okay, yeah. So they have got a list of novels page which has all of the series. So yeah, I mean, as a general rule, I would assume that most, not all, but most things that have come out since Gilliman's return take place after Gilliman's return. But if they don't, they'll be, yeah, you'll be able to see. He's the most powerful Morgoth, the bringer of Discord. Morgoth created Discord. My god. Is that why I can never get these bots to work? But boom. Can Angron be redeemed? I think in a way Angron is sort of the easiest one to justify a moral redemption for, because he got such a shitty deal in this lore that like you can't really blame him too much. But in terms of whether he can do, it's the same problem. So you've got to cut him out of Khorne to redeem him, really. And when you ascend to demonhood, it's basically the same as dying. As in your soul goes into the warp, and now then you become part of a god, and parts of you are cut off. So parts of Angron's soul were cut off from him when he became part of Khorne. So to really remake Angron, you would want to cut Angron out of Khorne, and then find the dead parts of his soul that like presumably have been eaten by demons at this point, but maybe the Emperor has saved them somehow, and then you grab those parts of Angron's soul, stick them back to the original part, and then in theory you would have Angron's original soul back, and then you can just make a new body and put him into it. The last part is probably the simplest aspect, weirdly, but the Emperor kind of implies he could do that. So he does imply that he could save Ferrus Manus after Ferrus Manus has died. Similar idea. And in addition to that, when the Emperor speaks to Konrad Kurz through the effigy that Konrad Kurz makes, he says that none of the Primarchs are beyond redemption. So perhaps it's possible, but it's never happened before in 40k. I don't know if there's a comparable example in Age of Sigmar, but in 40k it's never happened. I feel like similar things have happened in AOS, but I don't know if that exact sequence of a demon prince being redeemed has happened before. Maybe, I don't know. This is excluding Eru Iluvatar, who allows Melkor to be as powerful as he is, basically allowing evil to exist because Eru does whatever the fuck he wants. Yes, I mean, the gods are... And again, I assume Tolkien didn't come up with it, but it is sort of the peak of the... I can't remember what it's called, like lazy god trope, whatever you call it, where like the gods in Lord of the Rings can and do change things. They can, you know, when you get the host of the Valinor, you know, Angband is so large and so ridiculous that you've got all this kind of crazy dragons the size of countries and all this stuff. So somehow, yeah, they can just win anything if they want to, but they just choose not to intervene. So yeah, it's kind of a peak of that idea. Hey, not sure if you said something about it, but I am catching up at 2.5 times speed. Nice. But do you think there is a chance that we get to see the Khan as an Exodite leader? Oh, I mean, that would be cool. I could see that happening. You know, dragon riders and motorbike riders, or maybe it's on a horse. I don't know. That would be really cool. I definitely think there is a strong argument to make for Games Workshop to put the Khan on a horse or a bike, probably a bike, and put Vulcan on a salamander or a dragon, because like once you've got all the Primarchs back, you see this in 40k, they're all just on the tabletop, they're all just big beat sticks is what they are. And they just want, some of them are just a bit better than others. And if you want them to be unique and interesting, having some of them mounted, some of them not, is a good way to go about that. So I want Vulcan on a dragon. The new box is an insta buy. Cool. I am very happy for you Eldar fans that are enjoying this. You're having a good time. The timeline's a bit wibbly wobbly, whoopy pawpy. Yes, yes. Thanks, David Tennant. With the advent of the King in Yellow, when do you think Cthulhu will be introduced? Yes, I mean, it does sort of... I'm always curious how... Because it's copying the name of the King in Yellow is such a big thing to copy. Is that seen as a sign of respect in the literature world? I don't really know. I don't know if Dabnett has ever commented on it, but I assume that's the argument, is that he's just respecting it, and maybe that is how it works. I don't know, but yeah, it's an interesting idea to be like, I love that name, I'm gonna take it. What SM3 trailer? So it wasn't like a proper trailer, it was like a teaser. Sorry, not like a full, like this is what the gameplay will be like kind of thing. Sometimes GW is so cautious that they won't nail down what millennium an event or character is in. Other times GW is so flippant that they say the Khan and Dawn are dead. Interesting. But yes, I'm still, you know, I'm very confident the Dawn is still alive, but I've not seen him. I've not seen him yet in 40k, so I can't prove it just yet. How does it work if you want to play a successor chapter but they don't have a codex? Just finished all the Carcharodon books and my favorite chapter by far. So that's a good question. So officially, if for the Carcharodons, as they're an unknown founding chapter, you can just pick in the modern 40k, you just pick a detachment that you want to play. So you just pick a detachment that you think fits the narrative or the play style that you would like to play with your Carcharodons. Officially, because the Carcharodons have no official parent chapter, you could technically pick, I think, any chapter of any Space Marine any Space Marine First Founding chapter. So any detachment from any Space Marine First Founding chapter. I believe like in terms of the rules that you're allowed to do what you want there. But if you know who your parent chapter is, like if they ever confirm the Carcharodons were Raven Guard successors, then officially you could only pick detachments that are under the Raven Guard. Narratively, you would pick something that feels Carcharodon-y. But like, for example, if you were playing Carcharodons and you wanted to talk about, lean more into the idea of the Carcharodons and their genetic instability, then you would maybe pick like something Blood Angels-y, because the Red Thirst is a relatively similar like idea, and that might feel very narrative to you. And so I actually think for Carcharodons, I have seen that before, maybe on battle reports, and people play as Blood Angels, because if you're leaning more into, being raging berserkers, it fits Carcharodons a bit better. Who is the most powerful redeemed Dark Angel? Those are the most powerful. I mean, so Mike Brooks introduces a bunch of like interesting characters that we've not had a follow-up book for yet. But suppose there's a Blades Master in there. There's a Destroyer. There are Terminators, Inner Circle Companions. So there's a bunch of very powerful Space Marines. But yeah, I don't know who would be the most powerful overall, to be honest with you. Wish they would let you play online modded on normal servers. People crying ruined it. Oh, has it been ruined already? I have to look into it. I hope it's not ruined, because it was a really good resource. Yeah, it was the Gilliman is the best fighter question in small brackets underneath. It said that all the others are dead. Okay, well, if it said Jagatai Khan is dead, no, this is a joke. Lies from the forces of chaos. Who's writing this? Erebus? Sometimes certain things are much cheaper in the UK than the US, so I have to look for me there. I didn't know if it was the same for GW being a UK company. Yes, I know what you mean. I think typically things are cheaper in the UK, but it does vary. Like, the value of the pound and the inflation rates of various countries, and Games Workshop increasing prices all over the place. Like, historically, Australia was the worst place. Like, Australia, Games Workshop, I don't know what they had against the Aussies, but things were so overpriced in Australia. I think it's come down now in comparison to the UK, but Aussies used to have a really bad end of the stick there, and I think that's probably why the 3D printing community there probably does quite well, because, I mean, you were paying like twice what you should do. Yo, man, where is the thumbnail art from? Hang on. The artist is called Alexander Moroz. M-O-R-Z. Even if Angron came back, why would he ever want to go back to the Emperor? Well, to be fair, we never saw him without the nails, so maybe he could be reasoned with if we didn't have the nails. So I guess there's always that option, but I get where you're coming from. I think there's a strong argument to be made, rather tragically, that if you did redeem Angron, he may just kill himself, death by crusade, where he just takes as many sons as he's got that are loyal to the Emperor, marches into the Eye of Terror until he's killed, so that he dies and can be with his brothers and sisters who died on New Syria. I think there's probably a fair reason to believe that's what would happen, and maybe that would be the most just. Guys, don't believe Sandman. He's a southerner. They pronounce things wrong. Lamau. Hey, I mean, not true at all. But like where I'm from is where Shakespeare is from, right? All of the words are really just our words that you are all allowed to use. And so however I pronounce things is just the correct way of pronouncing them. That's how that works. Pretty sure the King in Yellow is public property at this point. Oh, that's a good point, actually, isn't it? I think in the UK, or maybe it's everywhere, I think it's 100 years. Something like, if you invent a character, you own it for 100 years or whatever, and then after that, yeah, anybody can use it in theory. Sammy, thank you for the gift memberships. Please thank Sammy or Adia if you did get one. Incredibly kind. Thank you so much to everybody who supports the channel. I love that I get to do this. This is so cool. So everyone that supports the channel, you really yeah, make my life so good. And yeah, I'm very grateful. He said something similar to Morty with burning the garden. Seems they're setting it up as a maybe later. Depends on where the lore goes. Yes. I think when he speaks to Morty, he says, perhaps you can be redeemed one day. And Morty doesn't say he wants to be redeemed, but when he senses the Emperor, he does sort of like kind of a boy. He does go, father? And like, there's, at least in my head, the way I read it. So like the idea that he's saying that, hoping that the Emperor can save him somehow, because being a demon prince in Nurgle, that comes with some downsides, man. That's some, yeah, that's a real deal with the devil. Khan on a dinosaur and Vulcan on a dragon, having the best buddy story adventures together. Yes. The other thing I am claiming is the eagle on the Emperor's shoulder pad, that is going to be the Khan's actual eagle. He's going to have a golden eagle on his arm. I'm so happy with that idea that I'm confident they're going to do it. And I will take credit, although I had nothing to do with it. Actually, perhaps one of the two missing Primarchs had, in effect, the Torquemada gene and would have made Angron just seem surly. Maybe. I mean, one of the Primarchs is described as very quiet. So that's Fulgrim says that. So I think it's the second Primarch who was described as very quiet. So maybe, I don't know. I think the Khan will come back with some funky stuff, and that will create tension between the Lion and G-Man. Can't have them all touchy-feely. Well, they're an interesting one. So the Khan is also a bizarre one, in that I suspect he will be, I'm going to say will, like this is definitely confirmed now, he will be closer with the Lion than Guilliman. The reason I say that is because Guilliman does talk about how it is difficult to work with the Khan at times because of his nature. And there is although they don't interact in the novels, it is said in the Black Books that the Lion and the Khan had a respect for each other, because they both were kind of separate to their brothers in a lot of ways, and I don't think they'll be like super close, but I think there's definitely a respect there. And it's said that, like, for example, when the White Scars call for aid, when the Dark Angels call for aid, the White Scars don't ignore the call, because they have a seeming respect for the Dark Angels. And although the White Scars and the Dark Angels do talk in Descent of Angels, there's not a lot on their relationship. So I think that would be a cool idea, because yeah, I think there is something like that in my head that works. The White Scars being weirdly more independent, like the Dark Angels are going to be, and in actual fact, perhaps disagreeing with Guilliman at times. The Khan is largely silent in 30k at the moment, because he is, I mean, he just died, so he needs a few months to recover. But yeah. I don't think he's going to forgive demons. They fucked up too much. Yeah, he'll forgive but won't forget. I guess I can understand that. I mean, I am always a believer in the Emperor loved his sons, so I am always going to give the Emperor the benefit of the doubt. But yes, if you believe the Emperor does hate all his sons at this point, there's some evidence for that. I wonder if the idea of Angron having the power of empathy has validity. If we implanted Angron's pure soul in a new body, would we see him forgiving the Emperor? Hopefully not blood for the blood god. Yeah, so it does have validity. So the book you want to read is the story of Angron on New Syria, his Primarch novel, Lord of the Red Sands. And in that, what happens, where this comes from, is the idea that when Angron is fighting the gladiatorial pits, there's a bit where there's a boy who is crying from the horrors that he's seen, and so Angron sort of uses his power, his Primarch power, to basically steal the mind of the boy, and he takes in kind of the horror himself. And so that's where the idea of him having sort of like power of empathy comes from. And also I think it's a fun thing to theorize on, in the sense that if Khorne wanted to turn a Primarch against the Emperor, the idea that there was one son who was going, maybe the power of foresight of Zeech, saw Angron would become like this noble paladin type character, and maybe Khorne would find it very entertaining to turn that son into a monstrous beast. And there's a bit of lore there. And I guess also, to be fair, the Warhounds We don't know too much about the 12th Legion before Angron. They were still the bloody 12th, but they were said to have like strong brotherly bonds and that kind of thing. So yeah, there is some evidence to it. It's not the most expansive lore, but yeah, it's not a complete internet meme. Games Workshop borrowing IP is a tribute. Anyone borrowing Games Workshop's IP is a crime and sends in cease and desist. Yes, I mean, yeah, the way they go about things it seems very aggressive. I mean, I spoke about it before. I actually had some people message me, which was very kind, and like there's a fair few lawyers that watch the channel that were happy to enlighten me. But yes, I am definitely not a lawyer, so I don't know too much about it. But I find it interesting because obviously Disney exists, right? And Disney, they allow a lot of things to go on that Games Workshop don't. And so I don't really understand why Games Workshop has to be so harsh if Disney don't. Do you know what I mean? That's the main thing that confuses me. I can understand there's definitely some things Games Workshop shut down that even if the community defends, I'll be like, ooh, I can kind of see where Games Workshop's coming from there. But a lot of what they do is bizarre. King in Yellow is not part of the Lovecraftian mythos. It was written before Lovecraft invented the mythos by another author, then was added in by August Derleth after Lovecraft died. Ah, interesting. Thanks for sharing that, man. I didn't know that. That is good to know. I guess that adds more credence to it because, yes, clearly it's more of a fantasy staple, I guess is what you're saying, than really just like something for another author created. But that is good to know. That does change my view of it. Any hints with Luther showing up anytime soon to link up with the Lion? No, it's all a bit weird. So when it comes to Luther, so sort of the sequence of events from as Games Workshop released the lore. So in 8th edition, this is before the Lion's return, they announced that Luther is now free, and Luther has gathered the fallen in Legion strength. That's the phrase used, Legion strength. Big thing at the time. Then, in the next edition, in the next edition, they released the Luther novel, and they released the Dark Angels Codex again, or a supplement Codex. I think it was Codex. And in that, at the end of the Luther book, we see Luther escape, and Luther wonders if it was Azrael that let him go free. However, in the Dark Angels Codex, we see a passage of Azrael in the cell going, "Damn you, Luther, I will find you." Because Azrael's the only one that knows Luther exists. None of the Dark Angels know, so it's quite funny. So Azrael's going like, "Damn you, Luther, I will find you, I will hunt you down." Then the Lion comes back, and the Risen are created as a concept, officially. And when the Risen are created, it's basically implied that most of the Dark Angels who turned against the Lion on Caliban were Risen, not Fallen, because they were deceived by the actual members of the Fallen that the Lion was the real traitor, blah, blah, blah. And so that suggests to me that Games Workshop have gone back and forth on the Dark Angel Luther lore, because they originally implied Luther was let free by Azrael. Then they changed their mind and said, actually, no, Azrael was angry that Luther's got out. And then they said that the Fallen had gathered in Legion strength, suggesting that most of the Fallen were allied to Luther. But now they're saying that most of the Fallen seemingly are allied to the Lion, or would be allied to the Lion, certainly weren't proper traitors. So it's, I think they've kind of gone back and forth a little bit, but we will see. I think they probably have a rough plan of how they want it to play out. Perhaps there's a narrow line through all of this. Like maybe it's the case that Luther has actually, because the Luther book avoids the question of, does he actually seek repentance? Because of course he professes that he seeks repentance, but the question is, does he actually believe that? And so maybe he does. Maybe what he has done is gathered as many Fallen who are actually risen to his banner, and he will one day sacrifice himself or do something to. Luther has to die, pretty much. I think that has to happen. And once Luther has done that, the remainders will join the Dark Angels, and Luther and the Lion maybe will get a heart-to-heart as Luther dies. But it's sort of all over the place, to be honest with you. There we have it. Exodites are officially back though, so pretty exciting times. One prediction of Sandman's 11th edition predictions fulfilled. So yeah, I mean that has basically confirmed the Khan is coming back. However, let me know what else you think is going to come. Any big kill teams you're excited for, or things you're hoping for in this edition. I can't wait to see what Games Workshop come out with next. They've come out swinging with this, so I'm very excited. Thank you so much, everybody that watches the channel. Please consider supporting the channel if you can, and yeah, we can help defeat our AI slop overlords that are inevitably trying to take over the Warhammer YouTube space. But thank you so much, everybody that watches. It really means the world. And let me know what you think of Exodites in the comments. And I'll see you next time. All right, take care, everybody. I'll see you on Wednesday. Thanks for watching this stream. If you could help me appease YouTube's machine spirit by liking and subscribing, I would greatly appreciate it. If you couldn't make the stream live but want to ask me a question anyway, consider posting it in our community tab and I'll answer it next time. To support the channel, click the join button below, which will give you access to more content, and you can drop into the members Discord where all the coolest Terrans hang out, away from the watchful eyes of the Inquisition. Thanks for joining me, and until next time, I wait for you and I forgive you. Good night.